In early 2000 was the beginning of the golden era of illegal night racing with modified cars, amplified by the movie Fast and Furious. In fact, in 2003 we had Need for Speed Underground, for example, which represent a clear example of this trend. But some people forget the very first racing game to use this trend was Midnight Club, made by the same studio who made Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto series. A strange thing is this game is made by Americans, but it has a lot of Japan references, like the name itself, which is a reference to the Japanese street racing team Midnight Club. In fact, the game's logo is a reference to a Japanese manga called Manga Midnight. Keep in mind, this is a PlayStation 2 launch title, so obviously developers in general weren't that expert at using the full potential of this console. In fact, if we see the graphics, we could say this is a game with graphics between PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2. Another bad surprise, which many people ignore today, is this game doesn't have licenses. Despite the game's cover feature a Mazda MSX and a Toyota Supra, the game has fictional cars, which you can't modify. It's strange, because in-game you have the Coca-Cola brand, but I guess in this case was a sponsorship by Coca-Cola to help the developer with the production costs. You know, Rockstar Games wasn't that big in the late 90s. Anyway, the game featured two main modes. Career and an arcade one, which gave you the possibility to use and test all the cars you unlocked in the career mode. The game modes were four: Cruise, Head-to-Head, Waypoint and Capture the Flags. Not so original, but the standard modes you can choose in many racing games of those years. But keep in mind, back in those years players don't complain about that, because they were fascinated by the new awesome graphics offered by the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. The game features two cities, London and New York. You can choose 4 times of the night, and some weather options include fog and rain, which actually has an effect on the grip of the car, making it more slippery. Yeah, talking about physics, it was obvious we are in front of an arcade game. Okay, some cars handle better, others have slower reaction when you steer, but they don't give you a satisfying effect on your hands. If it was closer to the driver's physics or to Need for Speed Underground's physics, maybe it would have been better. Despite that, there was a good variety of cars, and thanks to the progression through the career mode, you could unlock the more powerful version of the model. But I think sometimes the fantasy of developers went too far. A good point of the game was the damage system. Well, visually speaking. Other games such Colin McRae 2 had better visual and mechanical damages. But hey, considering this was an arcade game, it was a nice add. When you fully destroy your car, it simply stops for a few seconds and then you can restart. Another good element was the police pursuit, but sincerely, it doesn't add so much to the game, since it's quite easy to escape from cops. Despite this mediocre first chapter, it got the decent success, but mostly because it was a launch game of the PlayStation 2, and the fans had to wait 3 years for the sequel.
You're so damn lucky. Real lucky.
The second game was heavily based on the first one, but obviously it was better. The similarities start with the menu style. The structure is the same. When you change car, for example, you can still hear the engine sounds. Talking about cars, okay, this time you can't unlock the more powerful version of them. And okay, the game still doesn't have licenses, but this time you can see the similarities with the real counterparts. You can easily recognize the Skyline GTR, Viper, the S2000, the Ford Sierra, but the biggest introduction are bikes, but we'll see them later. Midnight Club 2 had the same game modes of the previous game, plus 3 more. The first one was the editor mode, which allowed you to create your own track through the cities, putting the checkpoints on all parts of the map. The second one was the online mode, but let's remember it was just the beginning of online gaming as we know it today. In fact, very few people managed to play online on PlayStation 2, and of course the quality of online sessions wasn't the same as we have today, because of the limit of technology and lower internet connection speed. The third one was the bomb, an original mode where you have to catch the bomb, escape with it to the checkpoint. The funny thing is you could use different power-ups like Super Mario. By the way, the classical race didn't disappoint you, thanks to the chaos between traffic and the other drivers. Physics were slightly better, still arcade obviously, but it was easier to control and handle cars. Also visual damages got little improvements. But bikes were atrocious, too fast and too stable compared to cars. There were 3 cities, Los Angeles, Tokyo and Paris. But I want to praise the developers this time because they nicely recreated these places. For example, I lived in Paris, so I know it pretty well. And I know there is a part of the city called Pigalle famous for the Moulin Rouge, which is a red light district of Paris. And as you can see, it's present in game on all its glory. So this second chapter was a real improvement in terms of originality, but technically speaking it was a bit obsolete for 2003 standards. For example, Burnout 2, released in 2002, had way better graphics and physics. But finally, the fans of the series got a positive surprise on their PlayStation 2 in 2005. Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition was a real huge step up, compared to the two previous games of the series on all aspects. And this time Rockstar Games finally decided to buy some licenses to feature real cars on its game. Even the menu felt more captivating when I played the game for the very first time 16 years ago. Right now I'm playing the remix version of the game, which includes 24 bonus cars. The basic game has already almost 60 cars, 25 more songs, the basic version has already 98 songs, and Tokyo City taken directly from the previous game, with better graphics. Yeah, graphics, that's one of the main improvements of the game. Finally, PlayStation 2 and Xbox were pushed to their limit. Too bad the PlayStation 3 will be released only 1 year later in 2006. Returning to cars, the game features an in-game currency to buy your cars, which are classified according to the performances, and finally you can upgrade them visually and mechanically. The level of customization was the same of Need for Speed Underground 2. Huge. Paints, rims, tires, spoilers, bumpers, lights, everything was very nice, thanks to the great graphics. The game had a sponsor, Dub Magazine. Dub is also street slang for custom wheels of 20 inches or larger in diameter, and was popularized through the hip-hop music. Talking about physics, also in this case we see an improvement, and the game gives you the possibility to increase or decrease the oversteer. Also, the differences in terms of drivetrain are noticeable between front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. During the gameplay, the player can equip its car between three elements, which allow you to activate for a few seconds the slow motion mode, or the infinite mass, or removing the traffic in front of you. Thanks to all these elements, the average player could complete the game in about 20 hours. But of course, to complete it at 100% you could even spend twice the time. And this third game full of content was the last game released on PlayStation 2 and Xbox. In my retro gaming videos I don't talk about PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 games, because they can't be considered as real retro games yet. But I can only tell you Rockstar Games published a final chapter called Midnight Club Los Angeles. Better graphics, of course, but also more cars and way better physics, and way more customization, including the cockpit. It's strange, because this Rockstar game features a camera which goes on the sky to show the full map, and reminds a lot the Grand Theft Auto 5 when you switch the character, not to mention both games are based on Los Angeles. Sadly, because of the poor working conditions and bad managerial decisions, the executives dismissed a several number of employees and developers, making impossible the possibility to make a new game on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And this is the story about this great series. I hope you liked this 16 episode. If you missed my previous retro gaming episodes, don't hesitate to check the playlist link in the video description. Thanks for watching and see you in my next video.
Anyway, what you here for?
Race some cars, man.
What you mean, race some slow cars? There's a lot of kids hanging around down on the strip, right between Rodeo and Fairfax. Go race them, then we'll talk.
Okay.
Good luck, homie. Come on, y'all, let's get something to eat. See if they could do me a burger low carb.
Enjoy.